Hey everybody, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and this week I'm sort of in between a lot of projects. I've got some stuff half finished and some stuff that I'm hopefully going to be starting today. But in the place of a regular tutorial, I've got the refined version of sort of what I'm hoping to be a new series of podcasts. I kind of announced this at the end of last week's video, but I wanted to sort of just make a separate video highlighting this. You can download it for free over on SoundCloud right now, which is sort of the raw, unrefined version. This particular version, I took the time to kind of rebalance the audio. So I hope you guys enjoy that this week, and I will be hopefully back with a more substantial tutorial next week. Hey everybody, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and this is a test run of, I guess, a podcast or something. Doesn't have a name, doesn't have any sort of idea of what we're doing. Generally, it's going to be talking about art supplies, nerding out over them, and basically seeing how far down the rabbit hole we can go. So the title of this episode, which is episode 0, is How Long Can We Really Talk About Pencils, specifically graphite pencils? Because, I mean, if we start diving into colored pencils, which, let's be honest, we probably will, this is going to go for a while. So I'm just going to go ahead and start things off. So we were talking about a little bit about pencils the other day, and you had brought up what kind of wood pencils were made of, which never occurred to me. Like, I had no concept of like okay, that, like, does it matter? Like, is pine better than maple? Like, so if you want to jump us off, yeah.
Absolutely. It turns out that most pencils are actually made out of cedar. So if you have ever slid your pencil into a pencil sharpener, sharpened off a few grounds of that, and then just breathed in and been like, man, that smells freaking great, that's because that's cedar, and cedar is amazing. And if you walk into any high school art studio, basically, and you breathe in like that woody smell, that's pretty much what you're smelling. You're smelling sharpened pencils.
That sounds like the artist version of like a drug habit, just like cedar.
Kind of, but
and like Sharpie, you know.
They are a drug. They are. Other than that, I found it kind of interesting because I decided to look into it a bit too. That different lead hardnesses and stuff. Graphite's actually mixed with clay, so the softer.
Yeah, I think I may have known that, but not thought about it.
Yeah, the softer your lead, the less clay that is in it, and the harder your pencil, the more clay is in it. And then it's baked and hardened before it's inserted in.
Huh. And then I have seen, I think, a couple of how it's made videos where I think for a lot of them it's like 2 pieces of wood, and so they cut out grooves and then put in like the strip of the lead, and then it like sandwiches down with glue.
Yeah, they glue them together, and there's like 8 of them all together, and it's just fantastic.
And then they just cut them and either round them off or square them off or whatever it happens to be.
Hexagon them off, whichever shape you're going to go with. Really triangle them off, because drawing pencils also come in many shapes.
It's true.
Many, many, many shapes. Whether it's to prevent them from rolling, or just because they think it's trendy.
I you know what? I didn't think about preventing them from rolling, but it makes sense.
Yeah, De La Rowney, actually, they make a lot of introductory sets, which pencils, one of their biggest strengths, I think, is that any introductory set, pretty much with different hardnesses, is going to be good to get you going, pretty much. But all of their pencils are triangularly shaped. So
I think it's funny. I gave one of the drawing pencils to Mike at some point, and he looked at it and goes, "There's no eraser on this." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, exactly." He's like, "Well, what do I do if I want to erase?" I'm like, "You don't erase. You find a way not to erase."
You don't erase, or it's BYOE. Bring your own eraser.
Well, I think what's the trick is not to be dependent on the eraser, but to use it
absolutely.
when you use it as a tool, especially like a kneaded eraser, when you can get like a fine thing and do subtractive stuff with it. But I think it's important to think. So this has been on my head, and I wanted
do a longer video about this sometime in the future. But it was something along the lines of the video is going to be titled something like "Should I Get High-End or Professional Art Supplies?" And the question, yeah, the answer is really always, well, it depends on what the medium is. And
It also depends on what you're doing with it.
Yeah. So I've, for the most part, come to the conclusion that a super expensive pencil and a super cheap pencil, there's not a huge amount of daylight between them. Like there's a handful of things
not really.
with wood and lead quality, but not so much that it's like the difference between a $2 pencil and a $6 pencil. Like paying for the $6 pencil is probably not worth the money.
Probably not. I mean, it depends on your technique too. I mean, for higher grade pencils, over the years, all the information that I've seen about them means that graphite, just like any other pigment, has to be ground up before it's like joined up with the clay and things like that. So with a higher quality pencil, the graphite will have a finer grind, the clay will have a finer grind, and they'll be more picky with the bake time to make sure that the lead is very, very smooth. And that's fine. Like if you do, it has to be ground up before it's like joined up with the clay and things like that. So with a higher quality pencil, the graphite will have a finer grind, the clay will have a finer grind, and they'll be more picky with the bake time to make sure that the lead is very, very smooth. And that's fine. Like if you do a lot of just straight hatching and you don't do any burnishing whatsoever, then you're probably going to want that in a pencil. But if you do a lot of burnishing, you use tissue or any type of a blending tool, that's not going to matter as much really, because you're going to be working that pigment into the tooth of the paper, and you're not going to really see much of that texture that's left over to begin with.
Yeah, I think just as a housekeeping note for anyone listening, what is burnishing? Because that's one of those weird art vocabulary words that people may not know.
Well, when you push really hard on your pencil and it makes the paper shiny, with graphite in particular, that's when you're burnishing. You're getting rid of the tooth of the paper and covering a complete dark, solid layer. It works with colored pencils as well, but we're talking about graphite.
Now, actually, from somewhat of my own clarification, would you also call denting the paper with a metal stylus burnishing?
Yes, actually.
Okay.
Even in applications where you're applying gold leaf or anything similar like that, there is a burnishing process with that, with a dull, rounded object typically, and it's all considered burnishing.
Okay, because that's what I was thinking of with burnishing. It is making a mark and then going over with a pencil to kind of get. I wouldn't say a resist technique, but it's the thing. I know certain artists will do it with like animal fur and bird feathers and stuff like that to kind of get a slightly different effect.
Oh yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can do it, but just the general act of using something with high pressure to the point where it's basically damaging the paper by getting rid of every bit of tooth so that you can't layer anything else on top of it. That is, like with a pencil, the act of burnishing.
Yeah. So, the more you know.
And if it was a wax-based pencil, the tension of it would actually cause the wax to melt just slightly, and that's what gets your pencils to blend so great. There, so, yeah.
Huh. Something like that. I decided to open up my Blick catalog just because it gives you those little descriptions for each of them. What's funny is you see things where it's like non-porous and superior quality and whatever. It's like how much of that is marketing terms and how much of it that is actually like useful info. That's why I actually used to.
The funny thing is.
That's why I used to like the old Utrecht catalogs, because they'd actually give you like a more of a historical description of everything.
Well, Blick is an awfully big store too, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of products in these small catalogs.
Oh shit! I've never seen this stuff before.
What is?
Graphite putty.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I've seen the water-activated graphites.
It looks. This is a needle. Could be. It says kneadable water-soluble graphite that can be molded into any shape you want.
Yeah, no, the ones I'm used to are like a puck. Like you can't
It looks like
mold
it's
it.
basically a graphite version of a kneaded eraser.
So it's a dirty kneaded eraser. A highly, heavily used kneaded eraser.
I guess. It also says like work dry, work wet. So I guess you could like get some water into it, sort of like a what the water soluble pencils and stuff.
The clay acts as a binder as well, so I imagine that the softer it is, pretty much the more water solubility you're gonna get. Water soluble graphite
it's
pencils
got to
are
be
like a joy to work with.
that's got to be a thing playing with way more clay than graphite in order to get that to be physically moldable.
It's either that or they're using some other kind of binder.
Even something like wax based, even.
Wax repels water though, so I don't know how it would be
Oh,
water
or,
soluble in that case.
My second thought was oil, but oil does the same thing, so it's have to even go
That's
like
interesting.
even go like the plasticky polymer route.
Maybe it's just uncured.
That could be. Yeah. So the wooden pencils. Then there's woodless pencils, which
Yes,
I've really been
absolutely.
getting into lately.
They're lovely, but fragile. I have a jar, actually. I had a couple woodless pencils like
Jar
2
of
years ago.
pieces.
I still have them and still use them. But it's like one pencil is in like 6 pieces.
That's the thing is
dropped it,
because
like,
I
twice.
gotten the Faber-Castell ones, which actually have a like a plastic wrapper on them, more or less, which I've heard makes them more durable. I don't know if that's super true.
I think anything over graphite would make it more durable, honestly. Like mine were not coated with anything at all, and its first fall, it just kind of died. But
I mean,
like, it
I
didn't
have
really
I have
die,
that
'cause
I have
it's
that
all
thick
usable.
yeah, I have that thick one too, but I haven't like specifically dropped it because I'm afraid to.
I have a block, actually. General's made blocks. It's not sharpened to a point. It's like if you cut like a slab off of the one you have.
That's
pretty
interesting.
much, which is kind of neat. And
I feel like
they're
that would
great
get
for, like,
everywhere
life drawing.
though.
It does. But it's great when I'm doing like a image transfer or something like that, scribbling that on the
Yeah.
back of
Just, like,
paper is like super easy
with a big
because it
block.
covers like an area the size of your hand in like a second.
That's a box of pencils. For a second, I thought it was a box of like graphite bricks. And then I've heard about like so then there's like the mechanical and clutch pencil route, which I don't know if you ever watched any of the Tyler's Art Shack videos on YouTube.
A long time ago, actually.
I'm friends with the guy on Facebook at this point now because there was a crossover when the Google Plus Hangouts kind of sort of like tipped up and then down. So we actually kind of connected and became friends that way, which was funny. He actually does woodworking now. He basically doesn't touch pencils anymore, at least unless he's like outlining for something for a woodcut. But yeah, so his thing is he loved clutch pencils. And I remember when I got the woodless ones, I was like, "Oh man, I'm taking your advice." And he's like, "You got clutch pencils?" I'm like, "Close. I got the woodless ones." I know he talked about both of them, but he was always like, "Oh yeah, the clutch pencils are the best."
Some people call them lead holders as well. They come in all kinds of different thicknesses. You can get everything from like your standard like wooden pencil thickness, like Staedtler makes a good one for that, up to like really freaking thick, like 9mm or something like that, or maybe 1.1, I think, but it's giant.
And then there's the mechanical pencil thing, which I hate mechanical pencils.
I like mechanical pencils. I have a Pilot Air Blanc .3 that is like my favorite mechanical pencil to use because it is so thin. Now they actually have .1s out.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a .1 yet. I've seen .2s though.
Because there's some on this page. There's .3s. There's a .9. Just kind of nuts. 0.5, 0.3.
But for your basic sketching, I mean, just like a basic like Bic ballpoint pen, like Bic makes great just basic mechanical pencils. If you need something that's just going to sketch and has like a decent eraser on the back, I mean, you can literally just throw it in like your pant pocket and it's going to be just fine.
Yeah. My problem was always that for a long time I was so heavy-handed that it was just like click some out and they'll click some out and go. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? But I tell you what changed. I sort of can use them now. Like if I was forced to, I could pull it off. But it was because when I changed the way I hold things. Did I ever tell you about this thing?
I don't think so, actually.
Okay, so I will show you. Anyone listening, obviously, we wouldn't really be able to see it. I'm fairly certain I've got at least one video on it. I'll get that later. So when I was in school and doing more writing than drawing, this is gonna feel really weird now. I still do it occasionally when I'm doing like super fine detail stuff. I would hold like this.
Very similar to the way my sister holds
super
pencil,
tight
actually.
grip.
She holds it like this.
I've seen that. I've seen one that was like this, and it was like, well, what do you do with that? Yeah. But
it's like thumb
so
to pinky, guys. Thumb to pinky.
yeah, and I actually would develop a callus on my ring finger because that's where I would always put all the pressure, and it's not there anymore because I quit it doing it. And the way that I quit it is when I started painting more. It's because I was holding a brush in the regular tripod method, and then at a certain point, when I started easing back into some writing stuff, I just naturally started holding it that way. And I was like, wait a minute, this is different. And I was like, why am I doing this? And I was like, oh, because that's how I hold a paintbrush. So it took me to paint more in order to draw looser.
Let's put this on the list of ways that painting has improved my life. I have a callus on my middle finger, essentially, from holding pencils and crap all the time. And you know what? At this point in time, I'm just like, you know what? I've earned it.
Yeah.
You can stay. I've earned you.
It's like people who play guitar that get calluses on their hand from pushing down on the strings.
They have earned that crap. Be proud of it. Don't be like, oh man, I've got a callus. Be like, man, look at these calluses. They're great. Except with pencils, it's kind of weird because if you're sharpening a lot of pencils and you've got like your callus and stuff, graphite gets in there and it's weird.
It's like all shiny now. I've burnished my callus.
That's exactly it. Pretty much, it's just like, no, love the graphite, don't love the graphite.
Oh man. So I think last time together we were talking about the ebony pencils.
Yeah, because they're fantastic.
Well, there was ebony pencils and the pencils they don't make anymore. The black wings. Well, they came back and made them, but they're not the same. And then the one I've got sitting in my stash, the Contact 440, which they quit making in I think like '83 or something like that. So it's like I don't touch it, but.
I'm kind of strange with my preference because my favorite pencil combo, actually, if I'm not just working with my regular like graphite values, is I love using a Prismacolor color erase, or coal erase as some people say it, and a ebony pencil. Yeah. The color erase has like a really light touch. You really have to push on it. It's kind of like a Prismacolor very thin almost, but it actually is able to smudge a little bit. And it blends really well with graphite.
I actually haven't heard. I haven't heard of that pencil. I might have heard of that pencil, but I have no idea what it is.
They're really popular right now, actually. And I saw somebody doing figure drawings with them, so I got one just because the touch that it left on the paper was so light, but it had more permanence and doesn't smudge quite as much as regular graphite. But then I blended it with an ebony pencil, and it's like you can get like these perfect lights and these perfect darks, but you don't have to deal with the like H pencils being very scratchy on your paper.
Mm-hmm. That's something
I do struggle with on that. At least that's a problem I always had.
I got in the habit of for certain things using a blending stump. So I'd actually even take the ebony pencil and put graphite onto the blending stump and then go to the paper that way.
Oh yeah, you can definitely do that. I'm a weirdo and don't prefer blending stumps.
It depends on
for
it depends on the
helium.
texture you're doing.
Yeah,
A lot of times when I'm doing stuff with the ebony pencils, I'm doing like character fan art stuff, and so the blending stuff would be good for like skin tones or certain fabrics.
see, I will build everything up with hatching and
But-
still like I'll blend it out a little bit with a brush if I need to. But I'm just that kind of weirdo.
As much as I hatch with pens, when I'm using the pencils, I'll do more like tiny circles, like the scumbling technique, more than anything else. Like I'll hatch a little bit, but I think where hatching with ink, you get a clean line. Hatching with a pencil, you get
It's fuzzy. It's
yeah,
like a soft
a
brush in
messier line.
Photoshop.
So I don't know what it is. It's like seems a little odd to me to do it that way.
If you use a very, very sharp pencil, you can get very, very clean lines.
Yeah.
But
You gotta
that's
constantly
pretty much the only
resharpen,
way.
especially the ebony pencils,
yeah.
to constantly do it.
A lot of artists that do their final line art actually in pencil, they skip inking altogether, will just have multiple pencils like sharpened all at once. And when one starts to dull, they'll just switch off. And like when they're all dull,
I think
then
I've
they'll
done
sharpen
that.
them all.
I
and
think
start
I've done
over.
that actually back when I used to use pencils more. I have
Because,
such
yeah, it
I have
can be
such
a
a
pain in the butt.
love-hate affair with graphite. It's one of those things
I
where it's
love
like
it.
it's
It's shiny.
it takes a long time and it's such a pain in the ass, but it's so worth it.
I wish there was kind of like an easier way out, like mineral spirits with colored pencil, but there is not quite a shortcut like that for graphite that I have found.
Huh.
So
Oh yeah, the thing with water and the yeah. I actually only
I mean,
found
like, yeah,
out about
there's
that
water-soluble
recently.
graphite.
I only found out about doing that with color pencils recently, and I was like, wouldn't this like destroy your paper?
It evaporates out,
Okay.
as long as you don't scrub it in.
Yeah, like when I learned about that, I was like, one, I was like, okay, it looks like you're cheating, because it's like for freaking like 20 years you try and do colored pencils and then you see this easy way out. It's like, oh, screw you.
Well, for me, it's only a base layer because I'll spend hours and hours and hours.
I did. I don't know.
Layering and
I don't know.
layering.
I don't know if you saw my. It's really long. My video on layering colored pencils.
I don't think I have actually.
It was a twofold thing. One, it was people that get the Prismacolor Verithins because they're cheaper than the Premiers, and they don't understand how to use colored pencils because and it's like, wow, these are garbage. It's like, no, they're not. You just don't know how to layer with colored pencils. So I did a side-by-side comparison of the Verithins and the Prismacolors, and I got literally the exact same like block of color with each of them.
Oh, as long as your paper has enough tooth to handle what you're putting down, you're fine. When your paper runs out of tooth, that's when the layering stops.
Then the other thing is I was extra hard on myself. I used watercolor paper. I was like, I did this on purpose to show you the fact that when you get those big white spots, it's like you just keep going, layer until you're happy with it.
Yep, you can also just really sharpen your pencil if it's really noticeable and just really get it in that little nook and cranny.
Yeah,
That's pretty much the answer to that.
I generally don't like doing that though because it really destroys the paper a lot.
Not if you're gentle.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying dig it in. I'm saying just like,
Yeah.
doop.
Yeah, but yeah. So it was more or less the gist of the video. So like, it was like the first part I did like the long version where I just showed like everything, and then when I switched to Premieres, I time lapsed it, which the Premieres are softer, so it's not going to take as long anyway. And then I took that section and like it was pretty close, and I was like I could probably keep going for another 20 minutes on each of these, but I'm going to hold off. And then I took the blender pencil and then just smoothed everything out. And it's just like, look, this is the difference. It's like if you
The blender pencil
you
is
spend
like a
more
saving
than
grace.
you spend more than 5 minutes coloring in a shape, and all of a sudden it looks so much better.
Yeah. pretty much it. Color pencil is definitely one of those mediums. Well, pencil in general actually is one of those mediums where the more time you put into it, the better it's probably going to look. As long as you've got a grip on your values.
Yeah. Like, good lord, people don't have a grip on their values. Well, I would say the biggest issue is not pushing the contrast in the super hard in either direction. Could you get a lot of people...
It's either not pushed enough, or it's just really overly pushed, where you'll see only, like, you're not trying to do a 3-value study. You know, you're trying to do a full image that shows,
well,
you
not,
know, that
not,
you have a
not
good
even
solid grip on value.
Yeah, not even so much in studies, especially with I see this on like DeviantArt forums and stuff a lot of times too. Like, here's a pencil drawing, and it's like everything is a midtone. Everything is a midtone. It's like, where are your super light and super dark values? They aren't there. And it's like,
people are really afraid to go too dark.
That's all it is. It's too dark. Nope, make it darker.
A lot of people, when they're practicing values, will just start with their darkest dark. And I think that is actually a pretty good way to go.
That's how I teach value scale. That's how I did it in the book. That's how I did it with a couple of friends. It was make your darkest value first, because even when you get to the midtone, like by the time you get to the midtone, you can go, oh, I can go darker here. But if you're trying to make the light value lighter, especially because I'm a torturous teacher. When I say do a value scale, I make sure to tell people not to use an eraser. So like I'm like do a value scale, because once you do it once and see it, then it's like, okay, do another one. Okay, do another one. So you start to get it and start to learn the pressure on your pencil. Actually, it's funny. I was talking to my friend Albert a couple of years ago when I did that interview with him, and prior to the interview, I was talking about it was like how to teach basic drawing, and he had taught basic drawing to like, I think, like high school kids in like a summer camp scenario at a certain point, and he is actually like officially classically trained, and I sort of have like a little bit on the outskirts because of high school stuff, but like we were like agreeing 100% on how things should be taught, and the biggest issue was that I always saw was people start beginners on perspective, which is like the worst thing to start on.
Yes, that's absolutely ridiculously terrible. I never understand.
Because you have no idea how to control your pencil when doing that. And it's like,
honestly, you'd probably have better luck trying to teach them about measuring in angles than you would about full-blown perspective, because they would have an easier time, I think, holding their pencil up and judging, okay, so there's a quarter of my pencil distance between these two buildings, so that needs to match up on my paper, rather than being like, I have to bring a ruler with me. That sucks.
I don't think I put that in the book. The finger measuring thing. I did a thing on building a viewfinder though, which is more or less the same thing, because it was a setup to the still life chapter. But yeah, I think at the time I was working on writing the book, or at least the idea of writing the book, and it was this idea of I start everybody with a value scale, because it teaches you so much about controlling your pencil. And I think the way the book is set up, I don't give anybody an eraser, or at least instruction-wise, I don't give anybody an eraser until like, what is it? I think the chapter on textures, which is like, it's you do a texture rubbing, and then you draw your texture rubbing. So it teaches you observation, and it shows you how to like apply the contrast that you learned from the value.
Step 1 in learning to use pencils is learn to use your pencil, your basic value scale. That's pretty much what there is to it.
I kind of want to go back and make videos about the chapters in the book, because I think it would be worth it.
Kind of like a more in-depth approach.
But yeah, so pencils. I'm not sure if we've completely exhausted our tangents, but so I kind of want to circle back because I was like, what else can we really get into with graphite? Powdered graphite, which I've never used.
Yeah,
but
powdered graphite's fantastic, just like powdered charcoal. Anything powdered and gray. If you're doing any type of value study, you can just sweep that over your entire piece of paper and go in with an eraser, carve out your lights, and go and carve in your darks. It's really fast is really the main advantage there.
It's also a mess.
And messy. Absolutely.
So
it will get everywhere. Powdered graphite, water-soluble graphite. Apparently there's putty graphite.
Yeah, didn't even know until
Woodless
today.
pencils.
Woodless clutch mechanical.
Quite a lot.
We might have covered it.
Just may have.
I mean,
But in the end,
to be fair, of all the art mediums, graphite's probably the one there's probably the least to talk about. And
it's
we're
the most simple.
yeah, it's the most simple, the most basic, and we kind of eased into colored pencils, which I got the feeling we would anyway.
I couldn't help myself. Like, we were talking about the way pencils are made, too, and I mean, like, if you're just talking about generalized pencils,
Yeah,
they do make some pencils now out of, like, a plastic polymer.
yeah, and colored
So,
pencils
if you
are wax with pigment.
Well, I mean, the actual wood casing itself, like,
Yeah.
isn't wood. It's like a plastic polymer.
Yes, I hate those so much.
It's used mostly in, like, makeup and stuff, as far as I can tell.
Huh.
But an eyeliner pencil is still a pencil.
I have heard of people using like makeup brushes and like blush and eyeliner pencils to do drawings, and it's part of me is like that seems like a waste of money at that point.
Markers? just use a China marker. That's another type of pencil. That's your peel away.
It was also like crayon, so I think in the realm of crayon, I think we may even I feel like that falls into the pastel category.
It's in a pencil form.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's not graphite.
yeah. I think it's like a lot of things come in a pencil form. I mean, colored pencils and charcoal pencils and pastel pencils and
Because pencils are great. Because pencils.
something in my head broke, and I was like, marker pencils, and I'm like, no, that's not a thing.
Definitely not a thing. But I like really light pencils, and I like really dark pencils. If
I love
anyone is looking for a
4
pencil
H's.
to start with. Aha.
So that's my if I'm sketching, I don't really just sketch on canvas with a pencil anymore because it'll mix with white
Me
and
neither,
get
because
screwy.
it smudges and it's gross.
I'll use Conte crayon because it'll just mix in and disappear. Or
I use
a
watercolor
paint marker
pencil.
at this point.
Paint marker has got to be like my favorite so far, I've got to say. Yeah, I did it with watercolor pencil, and then it blended in really weirdly, and I was like, ugh, this is bad.
I tell you what, when I was at art all night, I was using the paint marker, and the guy next to me was like, "True art all night style right there, big fat paint marker."
That's true. That's exactly it too. That's exactly it.
Has that urban feel to it. Nice. I got the volunteer shirt because when I walked in, they're like, "Oh, you're live painting. Here's a shirt." And I'm like, "Okay," which is how I got the one last year too.
That's awesome.
Of course, on the back it just says volunteer. So it's like I'm gonna wear that places. And like, what are you volunteering for? I'm like, don't worry about it.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
That's all. But I think there's plenty of value as far as pencils go in literally just grabbing any pencil that you can find and drawing with it. Like, I put it on the same level as a ballpoint pen.
Regular number 2
Just
pencils.
grab it and draw with it, and you can do a lot with it. A lot of, like, it's kind of like popular, I guess, right now. A lot of watercolorists are working with very limited palettes. It's a great exercise. Using a single pencil is kind of like, it's just working in a limited value scale. So see what you can do with that.
When I do my fan art drawings, with the exception of like the underlying sketch, which is usually the 4H, which you can't really see on camera, which is why I do it. Everything outside of that is just the ebony pencil, and it's so much fun. If I don't paint tomorrow, I'm totally doing something with an ebony pencil.
Do it.
I've got like 3 ideas I've been sitting on forever.
Why not all 3?
Well, doesn't
I better pick 2.
probably 1 because 1 will take me like 3 days.
Aw. Yeah, the multiple projects is really fun.
A couple paintings I want to work on, but I feel like we're winding down on this topic. Should try and find a way to wrap it up. So, actually, I'm curious how long we've
Get a
actually been
pencil
talking.
and draw.
So
Doesn't have to be fancy.
the answer to the question, how long can we really talk about graphite, is 35 minutes.
35 minutes.
Well, probably 30 because we tangented.
We rambled a bit.
Rambled into some
Rambled a
stuff.
bit.
I think that's
There's
a
other
good.
topics that we've touched outside too, but that's not a long time to talk about pencils.
Right, and I think it's a good start. And if any of you are listening, you want to suggest an idea for us to do next. We've played with the idea of maybe doing pens and ink next, but this all implies that there will be a next. We don't know. It's sort of a test run for how this will go.
We'll go down the list and see how many of them have smell good perks.
So, should we at least tell people who we are? Maybe.
Yeah, sure. My name is Tiffany, and I go by the name Rareth Rain. That's my artist handle, and I have a YouTube and Instagram by the same name.
Okay. I'm Ben. You might know me from literally anything online that I do under the name Cinderblock Studios. You can also find that at cinderblockstudios.com. Nice and easy. And this is probably up on one of my channels or accounts, so it should be very easy to find that way. I will also link Tiffany's info in a description box or wherever this happens to go. So yeah, let us know. Drop a comment, or I guess if you're so inclined to send an email, cinderblockstudios@live.com for any kind of show-related things, and let us know what you think. So I don't have an intro or an outro other than that. So I guess because YouTube is always like subscribe for more, but it's like, well, I don't know how this applies at this point. So I got to work on that.
Just draw something, guys. Just draw something. Listen and draw something.
That's good. It's like thanks for listening and just draw something.